Today we're going to be solving the question, what is the union of all closed intervals contained in the open interval 0, 1? Let's start with some notation. We're going to let F denote our family of closed intervals. This is going to be the set of all AB, subset of the real numbers, such that this interval is contained in 0, 1, which is equivalent to saying that 0 is less than A and B is less than 1. Okay. So this is the correct formulation for my family definition. Note that this is just using the definition of the open interval 0, 1, actually. Okay, so note that this is correct because if I look at the set theoretic conclusion, AB is contained in 0, 1, this is equivalent to saying that X in AB implies that X is in 0, 1, which is equivalent to stipulating that if X is between A and B, non-strict inequalities, then X is strictly between 0 and 1, okay? And so if I allow, essentially I can choose any X between this interval and need that it must be between strictly less than 0 or 1, okay? So notice that if I require this, this condition on A and B, then this condition automatically implies that 0 is less than A, which is less than or equal to X, less than or equal to B, which is less than 1, okay? And so X being sandwiched between A and B forces automatically X to be properly sandwiched between 0 and 1. And then this is actually the strictest condition, because if I, for example, chose A to be, if A were less than or equal to 0, well, then I can just choose X to be 0, and automatically X will fail to be in 0, 1, okay? So similarly, if B were greater than or equal to 1, then this condition would automatically fail because I could just choose X to be equal to B, and then you'll see that this logical statement will fail to be true. So the only way that this logical statement is true is precisely if this condition is satisfied. Okay, so this is our family. And now I want to claim something about the union over our family of the intervals a, b. Okay? All right. Now, I want to mention, and I've been using this notation for the past 2 lectures, I want to mention that if I were really rigorous about the notation, I might want to take the union over an index set, and that index set would actually be the indices A and B of these closed intervals. Okay, so let me just quickly, before I get into the claim here, let me just quickly note that with my notation is slightly imperfect. If I really wanted good notation, then I would define an index set I to be the set of pairs A and B. This is confusing notation, but like A and B in R such that this condition holds. 0 is less than A and B is less than 1. And then I would write my union over A and B in my indexed set of the closed intervals a, b like this. And then another way to write this more rigorously, perhaps, is to also write the union simply as the union over the indices a and b such that a is strictly greater than 0 and b is strictly less than 1. This is another good notation to be aware of. But I'm just going to use this notation where I use a script f to denote my family. Okay, so I'm claiming that this union is in fact equal to, well, they don't tell me what it's equal to. I have to kind of guess. So it turns out that in the previous lecture we discussed that the intersection of any family of closed sets is again closed. This is not true of the union. The union of any family of closed sets need not be closed. It's only a finite union of closed sets which needs to be closed. So any finite family of closed intervals, the union will be closed. But in this case, our family is very infinite. We have an extremely large family. If we were to try and draw a few elements of our family, they would look something like this. They're going to look like, sorry, one second. Here's the open interval 0, 1. And then I have a bunch of closed intervals contained inside. And pick any closed interval inside the open interval 0, 1. It'll belong to our family. So this is a huge, uncountably infinite family of sets. There's no reason that its union needs to be closed. In fact, if we think about the union is basically gluing all the sets together. And so we're going to recall that the union over this family of sets of A, B is the definition of this union can be characterized as any element of this union must belong to one element of the family. So X belongs to AB for some AB. Okay? So I need to find any element of our family of sets that X belongs to, and then it automatically belongs to the union. So essentially taking all these sets and gluing them together. Now, intuitively speaking, if I glue all these sets together, I should end up with 0, 1. I shouldn't be left with anything smaller than 0, 1. But I certainly can't have a closed interval 0, 1. There's no way I can escape. There's absolutely no way I can escape this open interval 0, 1. So I'm certainly not going to end up with a set that's bigger than this open interval, but I'm not going to end up with anything smaller either, because I can make these closed intervals as close as I possibly can to 0, 1. So I claim that there's actually equality. Okay? All right, now let's prove this. So, as always, to prove two sets are equal, we need to prove both directions of the set theoretic inclusion. So let's begin with the easier direction, which is this direction. Okay, why is this direction easier? Well, let's look. If I let X belong to this union, then by definition, if X belongs to the union, it has to belong to some element of the family. So then X belongs to A, let's say A naught, B naught, for some a naught greater than 0, b naught less than 1. Well, if x belongs to this interval, then, okay, so then in particular, if I write this a little bit more cleverly, we're going to have 0 is less than a naught is less than, so 0 is less than a naught, b naught is less than 1. If I write this inequality like this, then I have following conclusion, which is that x, since x is in the closed interval a naught, b naught, it must be in the open interval 0, 1. Okay? And that proves this direction of the set theoretic inequality. Now note, this is essentially saying that, this argument is essentially saying that if AI is a subset of B for all I, so if I have a bunch of sets that are subsets of B, then their union must still be contained in B. It's a much more general statement, but the proof is identical to what we just showed. Okay, now let's prove the other direction. Okay, so proving the other direction, this one's a bit more difficult. So let's let x be in this open interval 0, 1. Okay. And now we need to demonstrate that x belongs to some closed interval in this family. So if I draw a picture again, here's 0, here's 1. Now I've chosen an arbitrary element x. So in particular I've fixed x. Okay. So although it's arbitrary, it is fixed, which means that once I fix the x somewhere between 0 and 1, I have some space where I can insert a closed interval which contains x. And once I insert this closed interval correctly, then I can show that x belongs to some element of this family. Okay, so let's insert the closed interval correctly. Okay, so then 0 is less than x is less than 1. So I need to find an element A which is between x and 0. So let's just take x over 2. This tells me that 0 is strictly less than x over 2, which is less than x. Okay, so this gives me my first my endpoint in my closed interval A, and I want to write less than or equal to, even though it's strictly less than, because just for clarity of the definition. Okay, and now I need to find my B, so I need to find a number between x and 1. Well, just take the average of x and 1, which is 1 plus x over 2. And then this number is less than 1. Okay? So, I think this is a little bit more clear. It's not as clear why x is less than 1 plus x over 2. But if we think about it, x is equal to x over 2 plus x over 2. Okay? So if you replace x in this statement with x over 2 plus x over 2, then actually it becomes quite clear. Because what this inequality is really saying is that x over 2 is less than or equal to x over 2 plus x over 2, which is less than or equal to 1 over 2 plus x over 2. Okay? So here I've used the fact that x is positive. And then in this inequality, I've used the fact that x is less than 1. So certainly x over 2 is less than 1/2. Okay? So this motivates this construction. And then finally, we've produced an interval which contains x, namely the interval x over 2, 1 plus x over 2. And which implies that which belongs to I should just maybe say it belongs to our family. So with x over 2 greater than 0, 1 plus x over 2 less than 1, which implies that x belongs to the union over all a greater than 0. B. B. It belongs to the union because we've demonstrated some set that it belongs to, right? If we demonstrate some set in our family that x belongs to, then it automatically belongs to the union by definition. Okay? All right. Now, I should mention that this was perhaps overly complicated because I could have taken the closed interval to just be, for example, note, I could have taken x over 2 and x. Okay, so this closed interval would have worked. So I didn't need to do this trick with the 1 plus x over 2. That was a bit overly fancy. And they didn't even really specify in this sort of formulation, they didn't specify that a needed to be strictly less than b. So I could have even taken x to x, which is just a single point, namely the point x. So yeah, I could have essentially cheated and used this closed interval x comma x. But certainly, this demonstrates the idea that probably the author intended us to go for. All right.